you had me at Dragonblood Assassin. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video we're going to be talking about Black Talon by Jaime Castle and Andy Peloquin or something like that. I fumbled at pronouncing that before when I was doing a wrap-up and talking about this. But this is the first book in the Dragonblood Assassin series. And yeah, Dragonblood Assassin sounds pretty cool. It's got an interesting cover as well. And I did this one audio and it's narrated by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, which I know is immediately a no-go for some people, but I really enjoy their narration, and so that was another one to, like, yeah, I'll give this one a shot. And this starts off really interesting because we have a dual POVs here, and we have Cullen, who is an assassin, a Dragonblood assassin, you might say, but who is an assassin, and he's called the Black Talon for the Emperor, and he's out and he's doing things, and then he notices somebody else who's also killing some noblemen that's not supposed to be, and then kind of starts us off. And that other person is Natisse, who is a member of a rebellion group called the Crimson Fang, and so she's then involved too, and they both end up at the same place trying to kill different people, and that's kind of what starts us off. So I thought that was kind of interesting, just starting with an assassin, and while our other character's not an assassin, she's there to, assassinate someone, and so having that be kind of the point where our two characters meet, I thought was interesting. It also is, Cullen is a male POV and Natisse is a female POV, so having the two different narrators, and then going and doing them, I think, is interesting and worked out. I think I said in the wrap-up, I do wonder if since it's two authors and it's two POVs, I wonder if they each wrote a POV, because I could see it because of the fact that the characters are very different, and each POV does feel, unique and like its own thing. It flows really well, so I could absolutely be wrong about that. It's not like it feels like it was written by two different people, but I was just kind of curious if that was how they did it. But so, like I said, this starts out pretty interesting, and the whole idea of Dragonblood and whatnot, it's not explained a ton, especially at first, but the kind of the short of it is you're able to basically kind of bond with a dragon, sort of, by using a vial of dragon blood and then using some of your own blood. And I'm not going to say any more about it too much because, like I said, you don't get a ton. And I actually found that kind of refreshing because it's set up like we're going to get a huge explanation. But there was actually a line really early on from Cullen where it's like he has no idea really how it works, but he uses it. And we find out a bit more as we go along, and it's kind of interesting seeing more. But for the kind of modern fantasy style that this is, you so often are getting an explanation really early on. And people have joked about how, sometimes the beginning of a Sanderson book where it's explaining a new magic system, it feels like the tutorial, where you're going through. And you don't get that here at all, despite the fact that this does kind of have some video game feel in a way with the way that the magic works. So a lot of the ways that it's described, I could just absolutely see that as in a video game where you use certain skills and that sort of thing. So I could see that, but the authors do not kind of just jump in and explain everything. Instead, letting you find out more as you go along, which I thought was really interesting, because the idea of that I thought was cool and it was executed well with what can be done and not necessarily knowing everything, and the way that dragons fit in, I thought was cool and worked out well here. So it was definitely an interesting time going through. Like I said, the kind of the characters who run into each other and then end up kind of intertwined, I also thought worked really well. It was a interesting way to kind of get that story started. I will say that I feel like the audio performance definitely increased my enjoyment here. I know I'm early on it, but I gave this 4 stars. And I do wonder if I would have read this physically, if I wouldn't have liked it quite as much, because as it kind of got going along, I was a little less happy with some of the decisions that were made. Mostly it's just with, as we get closer to the end, and there are some pretty heavy hints much earlier as well too, but it starts to kind of go to some tropes that I'm not a huge fan of, and that I was thinking that we were not going to do in this story, and I feel like with just going with what the general description, like if you look up on Goodreads, or, you know, Audible in my case, but the description here is, we know Cullen is an assassin, and we learn about him a little bit more, and then Natisse, who is part of the rebellion, and, you know, dealing with her past and her murdered parents, and like just from that information, I feel like you could probably immediately tell what trope I'm talking about, just because it's very evident that it's going to do it, especially the further you get. But in the book itself, because I didn't read the description before, I didn't know that was the case, and that's not brought up till later, and so I'm just like, oh, we're probably going to do some stuff that I'm not a huge fan of, and some stuff that I wasn't a huge fan of kind of happened, and just made it a lot more predictable, and went in some really obvious directions with some things, and just did some of those things I'm not a huge fan of, and I'm being vague here because I don't want to actually spoil anything. But so, wasn't a huge fan of where it went in the end, but really interesting, like I said, with the setup of the world and the characters. I liked both characters. I really liked the way the conflict was set up as well, too, because we have two sides. We have somebody who's working for the Empire, and we have people who are on the rebellion side, and usually you see that, and you're immediately like, oh, this is the side that's definitely in the right, and this is the side that's definitely in the wrong. And you would expect that to probably be the rebellion most of the time, although you could go either way. But this book, the way it's set up, it's not really clear, to be honest. Like, you have people on both sides killing people and setting these things up, and you have the Empire doing what they're doing, and the rebellion doing what they're doing, and there's a lot of questions as to who's actually in the right, who's in the wrong. And even at the end, there's a lot of things that still don't make it super clear. It's kind of left up to you for your interpretation. And there's a specific line quite early on that I thought was a great line, because it kind of helps to do that. It puts something in your head where this thing you've seen from one of the sides, and you start to think about it, and you're like, oh yeah, I can absolutely see that. And so it kind of leaves a lot of those questions, and I assume the second book is going to explore more. This part is definitely a positive. Like I said, I think it did a great job, this story-wise, of not immediately just making you know who you're supposed to root for. We have two compelling characters that are really written well and have interesting plots on two very different sides, and it's trying to figure out what's going to go on. And they both have their own motivations personally, as well as the groups that they work for have their own motivations, and there are other people within these sides that have their own motivations. And so there's a lot going on, and you get some politics. You get a lot of action in here as well. So it was an entertaining listen for sure. I enjoyed the audio. The story was entertaining, and I liked the characters. Really, it's just that it started off so strong and so unique, and it just kind of did some things that I made me, you know, roll my eyes a little bit toward the end. So this is one where I'm like, my enjoyment went down a little bit toward the end. But it's still something I'd probably check out, like the next book, which I think is also, this is free on Audible, for the record. I needed an audiobook that was kind of short, so I wouldn't go over the month too much, and so I just grabbed this. I think the second one is too, so I'll probably check out the second book and see what I think. And see if it does more of what I liked from the first half of this book versus the second half, and kind of see where that goes. Because it did a lot of interesting things, although we got a lot more tropes as we go along. But still a cool book and cool idea, and something that I did enjoy. So really, though, those are my thoughts on Black Talon. Let me know if you've read or heard of this one, or if me telling you it's Michael Kramer and Kate Redding immediately makes you interested or immediately makes you not interested. It's always fun. Side note, hearing them curse is really funny to me, just because of the fact that I so normally associate them with Wheel of Time, even though they've both done plenty of other things. So hearing either one of them curse, and there's not a ton of cursing in this, but there's a little bit, and just hearing it kind of makes me laugh. Especially because early in the book I was getting straight Wheel of Time vibes with the delivery. Character voices are different, and you get to hear Michael Kramer specifically do some voices that I've certainly never heard him do, and so it was really fun with that as well. But yeah, I enjoy them. I know not everybody does. But anyway, those are my thoughts on this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description, as always, for the Basically Do a Discord if you want to chat books, whether this book, other books, any books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.